There is a back-to-back Super Bowl champion, and it is the Kansas City Chiefs.
I want to get 3, though.
We get a chance to do it 3 times in a row. How do you get excited for that, baby?
We came here to do a good job. Yeah! We got to show everybody who we really are.
You can dislike and disrespect the Chiefs. You're going to have to deal with the Chiefs.
No one's ever done it in the NFL, winning 3 in a row. It's a goal for any athlete is to try to win as many championships as possible, and I'm just going to continue to fight day in and day out to get as many as I can.
How about those Kansas City Chiefs? They're trying to make history as the first team to win 3 consecutive Super Bowl titles. In fact, of the 8 prior back-to-back Super Bowl winners, none even made it to the Super Bowl in their attempt for a three-peat, and 3 of the 8 missed the playoffs entirely. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs probably heard about that, and they said, let's try to even add to our offense. It was already an offense that won the Super Bowl, though you would say that it was more Patrick Mahomes than it was anybody else, right? They've added Hollywood Brown. They added tight end Irv Smith. They've added, of course, Xavier Worthy in the draft, which I think, for me, I'm even more excited about him than Hollywood Brown. You see the Chiefs on the field right now, and when you think about the expectations that are going to be around this team, Dan, obviously it's to win the Super Bowl once again, to three-peat. But I think the scary thing is they were a Chiefs team last year that at times had us scratching our heads, and yet they still won the Super Bowl.
They were bad in offense for most of the year last year. And the great part is 15-87. Think about what they went through last year. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. And are we going to be good enough? And, man, the field feels so condensed because they have no speed. And, you know, Travis was a little bit uncharacteristic with the drops. Imagine being in that conversation right now going, dude, you're going to have more space than you've had over the last 2 years. Because of who you mentioned, Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, Travis is going to be able to work the middle of the field, and Patrick's going to be able to throw the ball downfield. As much as he's adjusted his game to, okay, I got a dink and dunk underneath and whatnot, especially when the defense demands of it, I've now got a great offensive line, and I've got Travis Kelce still, and I finally have some speed that we can throw the ball downfield to and threaten the ball downfield, and then Travis is going to be able to work. The only question I have, really about the football team. You see Wanye Morris right there at left tackle. Who is going to be their left tackle? Now, both of their tackles struggled last year, and they won the Super Bowl, but that's the only question I have about the team.
Yeah, you know what? The rookie out of BYU, Kingsley Suamataia, they love him.
Yeah.
And he was a hell of a recruit when he was at BYU. He is a tremendous athlete. I remember talking to Brett Veach, the GM, in the offseason. He said, look, Lou, just keep an eye on Kingsley. We do a great job of developing offensive linemen around here.
They got him in the 3rd or 4th round.
Like he was,
felt like a steal based on
let me see.
what they're saying about him.
But I'm just saying, athletically, I mean, he has all the tools, long arms, powerful, good feet. And Andy loves developing these types of guys. And everything you say about the offense is true. I just want to shine some light on the work that this team has done over the past 2 years in the draft on the defensive side. The 22 draft is really what set this team up on the defensive side. Just think about these names, like in the secondary: Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Brian Cook, Najee Johnson, Leo Chenal, George Karlaftis. All of these guys in 22, when they beat Philly in the Super Bowl, they all played some kind of role.
Yeah.
That's right.
They all played, and they won the Super Bowl.
I think they led the NFL in minutes played by rookies that season on the defensive
side. And then they come back in the second year of their career, and they go, hey, we're going to win another one.
Wild, yeah.
So when people say, you know what, are you going to really miss Legere? Look, Snead is a great player. They also drafted and developed him. Yeah. And here's the thing about Kansas City. They continue to really not lose their coordinators. The core of the coaching staff stays the same. And remember this name. I think we talked about David Merritt last year, maybe on this show, the defensive back coach. One of the brilliant minds in football. This team is set again. A three-peat is right there.
It's real.
You mentioned the continuity at the coordinator position. We have Steve Spagnuolo on the defensive side in his 6th straight season as the Chiefs defensive coordinator. We have Matt Nagy in his 3rd straight season. And we mentioned the questions on the offensive line, left tackle in particular. But let's keep in mind, as great as Patrick Mahomes is, and he's got a chance to go down as arguably the best quarterback in NFL history, he is coming off a year in which he had a career low 7 yards per attempt last year. He had a career low in total QBR last year, 63. He had a career high in interceptions with 14. By his standards, he was off. Now, I don't know whether that's the offensive line or the wide receiver. And his credit,
they led the NFL in
So
drops.
many
his credit, he was good enough to go win the Super Bowl when he played at his worst at the NFL level.
And Travis Kelce stepped it up in the postseason, certainly. Dan, I'm curious your opinion on this, because you got to think they're in the postseason. We're saying they could potentially, maybe likely, three-peat. Sure. Can they kind of save Kelce a little bit? Like, keep him healthy throughout the season, rely on other guys, have him almost spot
I think they're one of
ways.
those teams that knows they'll be playing in January and February. So Andy Reid that really does like a great job of, making sure that they're building. And that was the thing last year that they kept talking about, both Andy and Patrick, was just building and making sure they're playing their best. And I think you'll see Travis just make sure that he manages, himself September, October, November, so he's again at that peak when they go on their run. I think because a lot of that depends on Rashee Rice and what's his situation.
The investigation's ongoing, and the NFL isn't going to hand down any discipline until the investigation is complete. I don't know how long it's going to take to finish the investigation, but it seems like it's going to take a little bit of time. Which, if it does, it could mean that he's available this season for the majority of the season, if not all of the season, and that he wouldn't face any discipline, which I think everybody expects to be coming. The only question is, when does it come? And it may not be this year. We don't know yet.
I think as far as the perimeter edge players on offense, when you're talking about trying to save Travis, they see that the clock is ticking for him. Even though he says, look, I'm going to play until the wheels fall off, and you would assume Travis. What did they do in the draft this year? They draft Jared Wiley in the 4th round out of TCU. Former quarterback, long, lanky. And talking to Brett about him around the draft, he said, look, this is a guy we're going to have to build him up and get him to come on. He's a great receiving prospect. They have their eye on the future. They know that this run with Travis isn't going to last forever, and they have to continue to restock and get body types in there. They've done it on the offensive line. They're set. They've done it on the defensive line. They're set. Secondary, rock solid. Linebacker, solid. But those offensive perimeter players, they've been there's kind of been a little bit of a revolving door. What does Sky Moore do this year? What do they do with Kadarius Toney?
Expect him to step up, Sky Moore, or not, Lou?
I think he has to. I mean, you see Kadarius Toney getting reps at running back. They're just trying to figure out a way to use him. So, hold
on to the ball.
What the cool thing, though, is when you got 15, it's just like, hey, you know what? Let's just try this.
It covers up so much.
He's the ultimate eraser of anybody else's mistakes. He did it all along last season in the lead up to a Super Bowl. And another thing, too, you got Chris Jones back. That defense, really, you could say, was the reason why they actually won it all. Coming up here on Back Together Weekend, we head back out to the practice fields. We're going to go to the Bears practice field next. You get to see Caleb Williams, the #1 overall pick, out there. We head coach, but he'll have 2 new coordinators. Kellen Moore comes over from the Chargers to lead the offense. Vic Fangio will be defensive coordinator, his 21st season as an NFL defensive coordinator. The team picked up Saquon Barkley and pass rusher Bryce Huff. Out are DeAndre Swift, Hassan Reddick, and the retired Jason Kelce, of course, who joins our ESPN family. Dan, you heard Sal Powell earlier talking about some of the changes that Kellen Moore brings to that offense, a little bit more shifting, motioning. You see the Eagles now out on the field at practice. I'll be interested to see even what Saquon Barkley's out there doing. But when you think about the changes that will happen with Kellen Moore, how does that help Jalen Hurts?
Well, I think it starts with that group that we're staring at the screen right now. This offensive line, 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, was by far the best unit in the league, and they were dominant. And there was a drop-off last year. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that they became bad, but they did not control and dominate the line of scrimmage like they had the previous year. So that has a butterfly effect. And number one, they weren't nearly as good handling the blitz as an offense, because when your offensive line isn't performing at a high level, teams are going to blitz you. Number two, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, he started to look at the pocket more than he did that previous MVP type of campaign season that he had in 22, because the unit wasn't good enough. And I want to see, can Jeff Stoutland, who's their offensive line coach, get that group back to playing to the level and the dominant standard that they had set, even without Jason Kelce. And then with the addition of Kellen Moore, the most interesting thing in that combination for me is Jalen Hurts is not Jalen Hurts unless you're running him. Kellen Moore does not have a past of running the quarterback. Dak Prescott in Dallas, he didn't do it that much. Justin Herbert with the Chargers. He didn't do it that much, but it also helps when you can an offensive line. So can that group get back? And then can Kellen Moore figure out the really good balance level of Jalen Hurts as a running quarterback threat-wise and still developing as that passer?
Last season, Philadelphia ranked last in overall use of motion and motion at the snap. The Chargers, under Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator, ranked top 10 in both of those areas, Lou.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that the coordinator changes are going to really be where this season really hinges for this football team and their ability to really get the most out of what is pretty much ultimately 1 through 53 going to be a pretty damn strong roster.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, that's obvious, right? But we saw last year, right? So when the changes were made offensively and defensively at the coordinator positions, people were like, yeah, well, you know what? Brian Johnson's been here. He was a quarterback coach. We kind of understand it. It'll be okay. Jalen and him will kind of like pick right up. He'll just move in the coordinator position, and the wheels fell off. You can never – I think those relationships and those hires are so important. Look on the defensive side now with Vic Fangio. When Vic went to Miami last year, you thought this is a guy who's like one of the godfathers of defense.
Right.
He's one of the godfathers of the 3-4 in particular. It was just a bad fit down there. Again, we were there. We saw it. We could hear the tension. It just didn't work. And now he's coming up there. Like, he's expected to really turn around that side of the football in a way that, look, we know that all the attention always goes to the offense. This is the side of the ball I think that their season really hangs on.
Yeah, I hear you there. Adam, I mean, the other big story here, obviously, is that they started the season 10-1 and then finished it 1-6. And the pressure was mounting on Sirianni, but he said, okay, I hear you. I'm going to clean house from the coordinator standpoint, start fresh here. How would you describe the situation that he's in as you see Jalen Hurts on the field here?
I think he knows the pressure that's on there, but really, this team is so loaded that there's no reason it shouldn't win the NFC East. Now, we know what it's like in Philadelphia. Also, if you're not winning there, you're going to hear all the criticisms, all the speculation, and that's going to be the case here with Nick Sirianni. This was an organization, not Nick Sirianni, an organization that decided to make wholesale changes at the coordinator spots, right? To go with Vic Fangio on the defensive side of the football, to go with Kellen Moore. So if they fall short again this year and struggle in the second half or the season the way they did in the second half last year, when they start thinking about those changes, it's going to come back to the head coach. It just will if they're not performing. He knows that. He's smart enough. And this is a team that, as good as it is, it does have questions. As Sal said, no Jason Kelce. So can Cam Jurgens step in at center and get the job done? Can Tyler Steen step in at guard next to him and get the job done? They are loaded at the skill positions. They need Jalen Hurts to get back to where he was. They have new coordinators. It's a new look, a new feel, some new hopes, but there are going to be some old questions if it doesn't happen in Philly again.
Yeah. They got to start well before that first Cowboys game, which I think is week 10. And I think their first 9 or so games, there's not, outside of 2 games that you sit there and go, those are going to be huge challenges. I think they play Green Bay week 1.
In Brazil.
Okay, but Atlanta should win. New Orleans should win. Tampa, that good game, but you would expect them to win. Cleveland, good game at the Giants, and then maybe Cincinnati, right? So other than that, you look at a favorable start to their schedule. Yeah. Lewis, I wanted to talk about the defense that you kind of hinted at. Because, Shefty, you said loaded roster. I would agree with that offensively. There's a lot of talent on defense, but that is young, unproven talent. And we're talking about Jordan Davis, got to grow up. Jalen Carter, got to grow up. Nakobe Dean, got to grow up. Mitchell, their first-round draft pick out of Toledo, he's got to go. Cooper DeJean, is he going to have to be a guy that plays immediately for them? So while that offense is really proven and loaded, this defense, while talented and hopeful,
is unproven.
He's still young and unproven.
See, that's why, like, those games, that first month of the season before that early bye, those are toss-ups for me, man. Because you know how the first month. You know how the first month of the season is. It's like an extended training camp, right? And you're having new coordinators. And look, we understand. Everybody respects Vic Fangio. We get all that. I would have assumed last year that when we went down to Miami, everything would just have been like a machine, like clockwork.
Yeah.
You went down, you were just kind of like, whoa, like something's kind of off on this side of the ball
That's
here.
Fair.
Although now he's at the spot that he wanted to be in the first place. But I'll tell you this, that Packers game, that's no gimme.
No doubt.
And I'll tell you this, if Kirk Cousins is able to hit the ground running in an offense that he already knows, he's like a coach on the field. The Falcons are going to have a amped up defense. You know Raheem's going to have him ready to go. Going down to New Orleans is no cakewalk ever.
You know what's interesting, Lou? Week 1, Shanahan tree offense. Week 2, Shanahan tree offense.
Yep.
Week 4, Liam Cohen, Shanahan tree offense. Week 6, Cleveland, Shanahan tree. So they're going to see, and that's a very difficult offense schematically.
Those first 4 games, this is
that's interesting.
It's an interesting time of year for them, especially considering the changes that we talked about. And on the defense, as you've already alluded to, a lot of new leadership on that side of the ball.
You talk about the unproven part of the defense? Well, there's the guy, Saquon Barkley, who can help that defense.
Sure.
Because if he's running the ball and getting first downs and controlling the clock, that defense that's unproven, that you're worried about, Dan, is not going to be on the field quite as much, right? Saquon's doing his job, taking a handoff from a $51 million a year quarterback.
And his job will never have been easier. I mean, Saquon has always been a guy that, all right, I got to go make 4 yards when there's only 1 yard. I'm getting hit in the backfield and getting hit in the backfield. He will get to the line of scrimmage or past the line of scrimmage without getting touched or having to do anything. So much more this year than he's ever been able to.
Yeah.
1, the offensive line. 2, the threat of Jalen as a runner, and holding defenders. I think Saquon has a unbelievably productive season.
You see Jalen Hurts there. Dan, he was injured in the latter part of the season too, right? And there were many times he was trying to tough through it. You think about the rematch against the Chiefs, of course. That was a Super Bowl rematch last season. They ended up winning that game, which was a big win. Then, of course, they lost down the stretch. I think it's a big moment for Jalen. He's probably laser focused on proving that he's a lot better than what we saw last season.
Yeah, I think trust is a huge word for me when it comes to Jalen. Trust with the scheme that's getting called, trust with the protection that's in front of him, trust with a coach saying, hey, if this defender on the defense pressures us, we don't have an answer. You have to throw the ball there instead of trying to do too much. And I felt like as the season started to spiral last year, the trust that he had in his protection, the trust that he had in his plan started to get lesser and lesser as the week went on. 2 years ago, he was the most improved passer I'd ever seen in my life. And then last year, it's all of a sudden forcing the ball to A.J. Brown, then not getting the ball to A.J. Brown. It's easier said than done.
I think Sal hit on something real important there, right? I mean, think about it. He said, 95% of this offense is new for him this year?
That's right.
That's a lot.
Well, Jalen brought this up the other day. He's had 8 different coordinators in the last 10 seasons.
Yeah, which is another reason why I'm saying, that first quarter of the season.
Going back to Alabama.
Like, Kellen Moore, man, your teaching ability is paramount here. And see, these are all the things that are behind the scenes, because all we're going to talk about is Jalen Hurts getting to his progressions quick? Is he getting the ball out of his hands quick? And there's so many other things that personally that go on between one play ends and the next play starts, going all the way back toward the week, how the stuff is being put in, how it's being taught, how it's being repped, how it's being corrected. We're assuming all this is going to be very seamless. There's so many changes, though, with a roster that has so much physical talent. We can't just assume that this team already has the East on lock. We just can't assume that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that first month, there's going to be some growing pains, man, and there are some games right there that are hairy, where teams are going to be going, hey, man, we're not relinquishing anything to you guys. The start of this season is, and Adam alluded to this too. You come out of the gates looking shaky in Philly. Oh boy.
What's the identity of Philly?
That's right.
Again, we continue to go back to certainly the start of last year and that Super Bowl year. They had the best lines of scrimmage by far out of anybody in the NFL. Their offensive line was so dominant. Their defensive line historically was getting sacks at just this incredible rate. You couldn't run the football on them, and then those guys hunted. And now it's a little bit of trying to figure out. And I think, Lewis, you bringing up the point of the start of the season is totally interesting because
you see
we don't know.
there, that's Devontae Smith. Go ahead, guys.
But we know they've got talent on the perimeter. I just don't know who they're going to be in October and November.
And who on the defensive side, who's that dude? Who's that dude when the team is driving the ball down your throat?
It was Fletcher Cox, right?
He's not there anymore, right? So, Brandon, is it going to be you? I mean, Brandon Graham's not going to be out there every snap, right? He's just not an every down dude out there anymore.
He's
Devin
the
White,
elder statesman,
exactly.
and everybody's much younger.
Seriously, Devin White, are you going to step up?
Yeah.
I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, are you going to step up? Who's it going to be?
For Fletcher Cox, no Hassan Reddick. He was traded to the Jets.
Yep.
So now you're counting on Bryce Huff to step in there and produce the way that he did. And again, there's a lot of questions on the quarterbacks. We'll show the quarterbacks here. It comes back to here's the thing. If Jalen Hurts goes back to the way he was playing in 2022, I don't care about any of these defensive questions. I don't care about what happens with the offense. If he's playing the way he did in 2022.
No, she said. But
you better care about some of these other questions.
Yes.
Well, he can't do.
He's going to cover up a lot if he's playing at that MVP level again.
I mean, they're going to score a lot of points. You would assume as long as the offensive line communication is seamless and everyone stays up. You're right. I mean, look, we get it. I mean, you're right. But there are a lot. The leadership component right down the middle of this defense is okay. So remember, like in Dallas last year, Dak Prescott was playing at an MVP level.
Yeah.
Okay. But then when they went up against teams that were juggernauts that said, "Hey, look, your defense, by the way, Dak, you don't play defense. But we're going to attack this defense that has a glaring weakness, and there's nothing you can do about it." Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like, this whole team, like, this isn't just about Jalen Hurts having a great season and coming back. I mean, it's Super Bowl and win, right, for Philly. I mean, you know that. I mean, that's the expectation every year. Everything that's happening on that side of the ball, again, Philly, Jalen can have a great season. They don't win, that city's ticked off.
Yeah.
It's ticked off. I mean, and that's why I think overall, there's so many moving parts here.
Yeah.
I just hope they get them all on the right track.
Adam didn't care about the defense, but
I
make him
care.
care.
He said as great as his offense is, you got to understand the Sirianni philosophy is like, we want to throw to score, run to win. Well, like, if we looked at the flaw of this defense last year, because they couldn't rush the passer, because it wasn't all that different than Dallas.
Yeah.
You know, teams were like, hey, we're just going to run the football at you. And then they got tired and they got lazy and in their pass rushing situations, and they would create these lanes. I remember back to the Cowboy game where it was just like, hey, there was such a level of dysfunction from this defensive unit that this was the game that Dak was, you know, the best player in football, so to speak. And this defensive line wasn't the dominant defensive line unit. Mm-hmm. You know, Lewis hit on it. Like, Fletcher Cox isn't there. And that's why I'm so adamant. Dak Prescott's running wherever. Jalen Carter's, he's got to grow up.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis, it can't be this is a big, physical, talented young man.
I totally get your point. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
If Jalen is playing, if Hurts is playing at a real high level,
It's
they're going to win a lot of games.
the pressure on everybody. But they're playing with a lead. They're unleashing their pass rush.
But I mean, last year, like, you know what crystallizes this for me? Don't forget the image of the Packers and what they did to Dallas down in Dallas.
Yep.
Like, it was embarrassing. And I don't care what quarterback you had. You weren't going to win that game with that defense being exposed like that. And, I love Vic Fangio. I love the old school, very straightforward, cold, dry. I was coached by guys like that. I don't mind. He's got to, like, strike those relationships, because in Miami it wasn't there.
Yeah, it's different now with this era of players, right? I mean, especially with a younger defense. I mean, we said it before, too, the key draft picks. You got Quinyon Mitchell, who's going to be a rookie, and Cooper DeJean, really talented players, but that could be a lot for them early on, especially with who they'll see in quarterback.
It's a huge stress, and you know this. In Vic Fangio's defense, if you don't stop the run, it's over.
I don't care about their defense. Get Jalen Hurts back.
Down on the defense. All right, we've already a little bit of room for improvement for Bryce Young as we're going to head out to Carolina practice in just moments. His rookie season was a struggle, right? Carolina 2-14 with him under center, and he was sacked 62 times. But the last three quarterbacks prior to Young all struggled as rookies and then showed improvement in year two. That's what they're hoping for, a new head coach in Dave Canales there in Carolina. Of course, they keep Ejiro Evero, somebody as a defensive coordinator that a lot of us think could have head coach potential down the road. We'll show you these videos here soon of Carolina practice as we head out there to see Bryce Young on the field. And there's so much that obviously needs to change for Bryce, Dan, but you see some of that potential if they could get back to doing things that he did well in college. And so much of it was just between the ears, that decision making that he really can shine in.
Yeah, I mean, that was his superpower coming out, is just the ability to think so quickly about what the answers to the problems that the defense was presenting him. You know, we started the show talking about really Jordan Love and Tua. Yeah. And the Miami model has got to be the one that you get this all he believes in the young player. Dave Canales has got a great track record of what he was a part of in Seattle, you know, with the rebuild of Geno, but even more so what he did for Baker Mayfield last year. I think coverage. They couldn't protect and they couldn't get open. Defenses were like, hey, all we have to do is try to cover Adam Thielen and we're good. Deontay Johnson comes over. I don't want to sit here and pretend that he's one of these, Julio Jones, Justin Jefferson type of guys. But he can win in man coverage. And what that does for a quarterback, okay, the ball can get out of my hands just a little bit quicker. And then you get into that rhythm and then that. And I think that's the biggest step for Dave Canales, who's on our screen right now, and Bryce Young. He's just making sure the thought process of, hey, we've got a guy really is cemented for Bryce.
Yeah, and like what's the number one thing that would help you feel a little bit more secure and confident in being able to go through that checklist in 2.5 seconds that you need
Being
to?
clean, a little bit of protection, right?
So what did they do?
Yep.
Sure.
They have made all those investments on the offensive line.
Yep.
They have more cap dollars allocated to the offensive line this year than any team in the NFL. I mean, Robert Hunt came from Miami and got paid at offensive guard. Damian Lewis comes over from Seattle, gets paid at offensive guard. You know what's interesting about this is Dan Morgan, the new general manager down there, right? He's an NFC South guy. Like, he played against the Saints. What did they do for a smaller quarterback at the Saints on the offensive line? Exactly. Made it stout when they had Jari Evans, Carl Nicks back in the day when Drew was there. They got to keep this guy clean.
Yes.
Right? So, I mean, they did a great job, I think, of really attacking this thing inside out for them down there.
And they go out, as you mentioned, Lou, Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis in free agency, but and then draft Xavier Legette in the first round.
Yeah.
Jonathan Brooks, running back.
He would have gone a lot higher if he
If it
hadn't
wasn't
gotten
for the
hurt.
injury.
Exactly.
The second round, Jatavian Sanders, Texas. So they go and get a offensive weapon at wide receiver, at running back, at tight end, in addition to beefing up the offensive line. So you can see what they're trying to do for Bryce Young as they open in New Orleans in what will be a tough game. But again, we mentioned it being about Trevor Lawrence. We mentioned it about being about Jalen Hurts, and now it's about Bryce Young in Carolina, right? Like, either he's going to be the guy, and this team's going to start to show strides, or he's not, and they're going to be back to square one.
And who did we see him open up with last year? The Saints in Carolina.
We
Talk
did
about
that game.
man coverage. The Saints are going to come right up there and be like, hey, you got anybody out here who can beat man coverage? Because if you don't, we're going to beat up your quarterback.
It's
and you're going to see it right out of the gate. Did you find some answers? You know?
It's interesting that you kind of make the correlation to New Orleans offensive line-wise. I'm adamant this is not a prove-it year for me with Bryce Young. I still think 25 is the year where they'll really figure it out. But if you looked at Bryce's college tape, and then you look at, okay, what was the thing that was missing last year? These throwing lanes for Drew Brees. And that didn't happen last year. And if you even go back to college, the playmaking was there. And he would focus on some of these pockets, the throwing lanes that get created. His ability to know, he can see the defense because the interior that Lewis was just pointing out, the interior of the offensive line is creating these throwing lanes. Last year, he did not have Dave Canales. Can he do that with that offensive line to just allow Bryce Young to have some window to actually see through? I don't think it's fair to.
Forget about it. It's fair. If he does not play well this year, you don't think the pressure's on? That there's not going to be questions that are asked after this year?
I would hope internally no. They've had to revamp everything.
Well, I would say this. I would say like last year there was already some questions about did we pick the right guy?
Now, was that in relation to Bryce or what CJ did?
I think it's both.
Okay.
If CJ doesn't have the year he had.
They go together. I'm just telling you, that's what I'm hearing.
Dan says nothing until 2025. I say, what if he has the year this year that he had, the type of year, because new coaching staff, and as we talked about, new weapons. That's even more reason. If he has that kind of year this year, what happens after this season?
I don't know. I don't know what they do. I'm just saying, though, but I'm with you as far as the questions. Like, you're saying it's not fair to do. I'm saying, like, last year, because of how CJ played on a team that maybe many people thought wasn't going to really contend for anything last year. We were on. I know I personally was sitting there going, "This is a nice situation for Bryce. Look at this coaching staff." And you know what? It was total dysfunction.
$200 million is a lot of money. You could read that. Tua is a $100 million man. 200 is better, though. And Tagovailoa knows it because there's few people that can chant like Cuba Gooding Jr. and have it make sense. Tua did that today, yelling, "Show me the money" at training camp after officially signing his 4-year, $212.4 million extension. The deal makes him the highest paid player in Dolphins history. Here he is with his head coach.
I've been told from several birdies that are, here in the facility that are upstairs as well, that he went to bat for me. I won't go into details of things that I heard were said, but just know like he is what he says. He did what I was thinking he would do for me, and not just for me, but for any other player, so I'm very grateful for that.
Our objective was to continue growth and work together, and in that process, you get compensated. I'm happy, but I also expected it to get done, and now that it's done, it's about moving forward because it's maybe a handshake and a smile, but it's not a celebration. It's a cool point for the organization to move forward, but moving forward, we are.
It's pretty cool because we didn't even know if he was going to continue to play football, a year or so ago. So look, Tua's average take-home per year is just over $53 million. That's the fourth highest among current quarterback contracts behind Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, and Jordan Love. Not pictured on your screen, though, is Patrick Mahomes. He is eighth on this list at just over $46 million.
Camp, it was still a limited day of participation for Russell Wilson as he and Justin Fields continue their prep to be Pittsburgh's Week 1 starter. A calf issue still preventing Russ from going full speed during some individual drills, even though Sunday produced the most work he's put in since training camp opened.
Russ worked partially today and expect him to get going a little bit as we come off this off day.
Do you expect to be able to see Russ in some team periods next week?
That's what I said.
Coach, how much are you looking forward to putting on the pads next week?
Man, it's just a component of the process, man. I love every component of this process, though. I'm a football lover. I'm a team development lover. Training camp is Kennywood for me.
Mike Tomlin, always going to be Mike Tomlin. Now, here's the deal. Whoever lines up under center for the Steelers this season, they're going to need some protection. Last season, both Wilson and Fields ranked at the bottom of the league in sack rate. The biggest reason? They ranked last and second to last.
August 1st at 8 p.m. Zach, Bears finished at the bottom of the NFC North last season, 7-10 record. They now start the season hosting the Titans. Bears currently at -4.5 on the spread in that Week 1 matchup. But what Bears wager are you eyeing this season?
I'm going to go with rookie quarterback Caleb Williams to be the leading rookie passer at -130. I think it's hard to predict how this Bears team is going to do overall, Jordan. So many new players, and then obviously you have a rookie quarterback. But I do think that Williams can have statistical success over his counterparts in Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. Right off the bat, I think he has the better talent overall. Chicago emphasized getting him the proper players offensively. They have Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore. Rome Odunze, they just drafted, talented backfield. And I think there's usually a window of coaches that will break in rookie quarterbacks, limit that playbook. We may see that with Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, but I don't think that's going to be the case with Caleb Williams, who has the arsenal of throws that he can make already. So as long as Williams stays healthy, I think he will end up being the passing yard leaders amongst the rookie quarterbacks at -130.
And I like that look from you, Zach, but I'm actually going to look to attack their team total. I'm going under 8.5 wins here. Great price point at plus $1.30. I think this Bears team is being significantly overvalued in the marketplace. I think they're a bit of a paper tiger, especially defensively. We don't know offensively what they're going to look like. Down the stretch last season, they played very well. They were playing well above expectations. If you look at the talent on the defensive side of the football, in my opinion, I think they're going to have a lot of difficulty replicating the success they had down the stretch defensively. I just don't think they have a top 15 unit. Offensively, they went out and they added a lot of quality players at the skill position. Keenan Allen opposing DJ Moore. We know about that. Adding DeAndre Swift to the backfield and the #1 overall pick. Caleb Williams, but I have some serious question marks on the line of scrimmage on both sides, particularly this offensive line. I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain drives running the football. So I think this Bears team as a whole is going to struggle. I think there's tremendous value here in what is a very competitive NFC North as well. I love fading them under 9 wins, especially at plus money.
Switching gears to the Texans now, Alex. They won the AFC South last season, finishing at 10-7. Current odds to win the Super Bowl right now, plus 1,500. That's the 6th best odds. Where is your head at wager-wise for Houston this season?
Jordan, I am not seeing it with this Texans team. I think they are the biggest regression candidate in football. I absolutely love fading their win total or their team total under 9.5 wins for this Texans team, who snuck up on everybody last year. Their team win total was 5.5 going into the offseason last year. Jumping up to 9.5 is a massive jump in my opinion. Obviously, CJ Stroud had a phenomenal rookie year, but they played all their games in the afternoon. Now they have 5 primetime games. They have a much more difficult schedule. They have a big bullseye on their back as well. They lost numerous starters on the defensive side of the football where they overachieved, in my opinion. Their big move in the offseason was adding Stephon Diggs, where they already had a lot of talent and depth at the wide receiver position. I really don't see that move moving the needle for this team. I think they're a massive regression candidate. I think 10 wins is a huge ask for this team. I also think the division has improved significantly. I look at the Colts and the Jaguars as potential division winners here. I love fading the Texans, especially at plus money. I think 10 wins is a massive ask for this team.
I'm going to attack one of the receivers in Tank Dell and go over 825.5 receiving yards. Broke out last year as a third-round rookie with 47 catches for 709 yards and 7 touchdowns. I think he was entering that next phase, that next level as a wide receiver right before he got hurt. His final 4 games, he had 5 touchdowns along with 369 yards. This is an offense that is not afraid to push the football vertically down the field for explosive plays with CJ Stroud at quarterback. I think that's only going to grow when you add pass catching type of running back in Joe Mixon, adding Stephon Diggs, and the chemistry with Stroud and Tank Dell, I would argue, is top 10 in the NFL amongst young quarterbacks and young wide receivers. I think there's plenty of footballs to go around between the new additions that they have, and with Tank Dell, I'll go over 825.5 receiving yards for Dell.
All right, lastly, guys, it is time to attack these future markets. No more time to waste. Zach, what should we get in on right now?
I'm very high on going against the LA Rams for this upcoming season, Jordan, under 8.5 wins, plus 118. I think there's always a little bit of bias attached to a team that won the Super Bowl recently. The Rams did a few years ago, and then showed signs last year as the Rams did as well. But we know on the defensive side of the football, they're going to take a big hit losing Aaron Donald. They're a team that has struggled out the gate the past 2 seasons, where they've started 3-6 each of the past 2 years, and the schedule is not their friend to open the year. 2 road games to start the season against Detroit and Arizona, home game against the 49ers, then play Chicago and the Packers. So I think they're going to have a slow start for a 3rd straight year. I'd be surprised if they don't have 3 losses there. And then their division overall, we know, is going to be very tough with the San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, and an improved Arizona Cardinals team. I'll go under 8.5 wins for the Rams.
I like that look, Zach, but you know I had to attack a season-long player prop. I'm going to go under 875.5 receiving yards for Calvin Ridley. I think this number is way too high for Calvin Ridley, who just signed a big deal to join the Tennessee Titans. I would argue that this is a significant downgrade in comparison to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's also a brand new offense that he's going to have to learn as well. Last season, he appeared in all 17 games, went for 1,016 yards, had 136 targets. I think he's going to have a hard time replicating those targets, and particularly the quality of targets as well on Tennessee, who already has DeAndre Hopkins. They have 2 running backs in Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, who can catch passes, and as Okonkwo, they have a pass-catching tight end as well. And I just don't know how much Will Levis is going to be able to throw the football and how effective he's going to be. Also, Calvin Ridley at this point in his career is being primarily used on the boundary, on the perimeter. He's not really utilized in the slot or over the middle of the field. So it's very difficult to connect on those targets because they're deep down the field on the sideline. That is the most difficult area to attack for a quarterback. And I just don't think Will Levis at this point in his young career is a top 20 quarterback. And I just don't know how much this Tennessee offense is going to throw the football in competitive game environments. So 875 yards, everything would have to go right, in my opinion, for Ridley to eclipse this, and he'd have to likely appear in all 17 games as well. I think he's an excellent fade candidate under 875.5.
Well, Adam, nice spiral, by the way.
You do that without the laces there. What can this guy not do?
I can do it all.
He can't gritty.
No laces.
Why are you doing no laces? Can you throw it with the laces?
Here's
Can you
the
throw a
laces.
spiral with the laces?
There we go. Let's go.
No, you throw a better spiral without the laces.
You know what?
What a
Adam's going against the grain, as he is wont to
Mahomes
do.
doesn't use the laces.
There we go. Adam and Patrick Mahomes, the same. You know what? Courtney, save us here. Courtney Cronin is here with us, coming our way from Bears camp. And Courtney, there's so much to talk about with Caleb Williams. We get to see Roma Dunze on the field for the first time. What are you learning about how everyone's feeling around this Bears team and all of the expectations there?
Well, Laura, speaking of Patrick Mahomes, you know how Caleb Williams gets the comparison to number 15 down in Kansas City because of those off-platform throws, the arm angles he's hit? Well, we were able to actually see that in practice the other day. Caleb Williams moving at a very high speed on the run, delivering a pass to Keenan Allen with such accuracy, even though he was in an off-platform motion. And I asked Caleb Williams yesterday, I got a chance to sit down with him to pick his brain about how he was able to add that part of his throwing motion to his repertoire. And Mahomes credits baseball. Caleb Williams credits swimming. It's something that he did competitively for a while growing up. He stopped right before high school, but he said it strengthens the muscles in his shoulder, in his lats. It helps with the rotation with his upper body, and the strokes that help him the most, backstroke and freestyle. He used to do the individual medley. He said that he is going to use swimming now as more of a recovery tool, but it is notable that this is maybe an out-of-the-box approach to how Caleb Williams is able to hit those various arm angles and make it look so easy in the process.
I love it. The inside scoop from Courtney on those arm angles from Caleb Williams. Thanks for being with us, Courtney. You know, I think when we talk about the Bears,
he could beat Katie Ledecky?
I was just wondering that.
No.
He missed his calling. He could have been in Paris right now.
Caleb
Williams, Caleb Dressel?
I'm going to say probably no, based on what he decided to do with his career. But listen, we could get him out there swimming and see what happens. When it comes to the Bears, you guys, what just happened? Like, I don't even know what these people are doing here. All right, when you talk about him, you got to think with this Bears team, they've set up Caleb Williams for more success than Justin Fields would set up with. You look at it, Keenan Allen, who Courtney just referenced, DeAndre Swift, the guard, Coleman Shelton, Jonathan Owens, and Kevin Byard on the defense. He should be in position to have success. But what does that success actually look like for Caleb Williams as a rookie? You know, there's going to be some of those rookie moments.
Yeah, if Caleb is who the Bears expect him to be, they're playing meaningful games in December this year. I think that's because of the health of their roster. That's fair to say. You know, Caleb's going to have to go on this journey that every unbelievably physically talented young quarterback goes on is, what can I and can't I do in the NFL? When should I and should I not do in the NFL? And Courtney was referencing some of these off-platform, jaw-dropping throws. You want that in the game. We've seen that out of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. You don't necessarily have to have it all the time. I mean, if you go back to his college tape, he's just an unbelievably physically talented young man. Oregon's going to pressure him. Safety goes to the middle of the field. They're going to play man coverage. And you get these crossing routes versus man coverage. And I love the fact that he's looking at the bottom of the screen. Oh, is that corner leaving? Now I can make a really difficult throw. But these throws are so unique because you have to have air on them. If he throws these balls on a line, they're picked off. Those are really difficult throws. Those are challenging throws. And Courtney's referencing some of the childhood stuff that allowed him to be able to do that stuff. These are the moments when I go, all right, how much of this is real in the NFL? Because I would say throw the route to the bottom or the top. You got easy completions. In the NFL, you kind of have to take those. But this guy's like, no, I'm the best player in the field. And even though that you are talented on the defensive line and you're athletic on the defensive line, you're not as talented and or athletic as me. And him being able to do this stuff is the draw. It's just really cool, or it'd be really cool to see how much he's able to do, because just because the dude in Kansas City does it doesn't mean everybody can.
Don't you feel like even at his pro day, Lou, and you were there, Caleb Williams was trying to do a little bit less of that off-platform stuff. He was staying within a system a little bit more, maybe trying. I mean, we knew he was going to be taken number 1 overall, but
he consciously made the decision to do that. He told me.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, he didn't have one single off-platform throw that entire workout. He eliminated all of it. He said, look, I'm tired of people thinking that's all I am. I am a guy who can win from the pocket. I'm a guy who wants to win from the pocket. I don't want to live in that environment all the time. He did it at USC because equal parts because he had to sometimes because the defense was so bad, especially last year. And also because he could get away with it, right? What's interesting about Chicago is that when you look at their offensive line, this is if you want to just use objective measures, this is a top 5 offensive line last year as measured by pass block win rate, run block win rate. So it's not like he's going behind some like sieve, Swiss cheese of an offensive line. This team is rock solid. And they've got a rock solid running game. And they've got rock solid wide receivers now. Like you could just say, hey, look, these guys can produce. As much as we want to make this about is Caleb going to be in structure versus like the same discussion we had like with Bryce Young, I'm not even really worried about all that. This, to me, is about Shane Waldron.
Yeah.
Shane, what do you have? How are you bringing him along right now? How are you installing? How are you coaching? How are you correcting? What's the film study like? How's Caleb getting along with you?
Yeah.
How's he getting along with the guys? That to me, you know this. You live this world.
Sure.
You know that's where you find the inches. That's where you find the consistency. Right? So, look, they already moved on from one offensive coordinator who they didn't think was going to be ready to able to handle this kind of responsibility. And they bring in Shane Waldron now. That's a huge job you have right now.
And
huge job.
The challenge for Shane is going to be, you get this unbelievably talented guy. Don't take a stinger away from him.
Yeah.
You know, like you're trying to get him to fit into the style of an offense because that's what's best for. But
you don't have to live in that environment that you lived in at USC all the time.
100%.
We have a pretty damn good offensive line.
100%.
And you know what? You got some trained killers coming after you now. Look at these games right out of the gate.
Tough defenses out of the gate.
Look at these guys can hunt the passer now. So you don't want it. You know what? Even if you can get away with some things, do you really want them to start thinking, hey, I can kind of do this.
Right.
I can kind of do this. And then next thing you know, Danielle Hunter's like, bow, right upside your head.
And
you don't want to do that.
And there's so much riding on Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
You don't want to ruin him before he gets. That's the worst thing.
But I think the way you ruin him, I think the way that you would ruin him is if you try to take away some of that special. So it is such. Lewis is right. The conversations of, hey, let's not do. We don't have to do that there. Hey, you don't have to get into that world. The third down in this situation, that's when you might have to go be you. You might have to go be you special. And there's that conversation and trust that's got to get built.
Yeah. Lou, you say the offensive line's better. 108 sacks they've given up the last 2 years.
Yeah, okay, but so pass block win rate means, like, are you holding guys off for 2.5 seconds, which by that amount of time, right, the quarterback should be able to get the ball off. Now, what was one of the major criticisms of Justin Fields?
He's holding it too long.
Football, right? So, I mean, giving up sacks, versus how efficient the offensive line is, they don't always marry
And you got people winning on the outside now.
Right.
You got receivers that are actually going to get open, so I'm not waiting for you.
Yeah, it really is. It is set up for him to really, light it up. It really is. But I'm telling you,
that early schedule though there's some issues there. They end up, I think it was like 5 weeks in or something. They played the Panthers, and at that point maybe it's a little breather. Oh, there you see it.
I don't know how many people know the name Shane Waldron. Everybody here knows who he is, and then he came from Seattle and all. But man, is he going to get a lot of run in the press conferences this year?
And you know what stands out as a quarterback for Caleb? Heavy zone, heavy zone, heavy zone, heavy zone. You're going to get zone defenses that are just going to challenge you. Hey, dude, you ain't running around like you did at school.
Well, you know the blitz is coming. You saw that. You saw how D'Amico would change it up. The Texans. You saw what he did to Lamar Jackson last year in the playoffs. He just started sending people left and right. Yeah, they're going to test the young man. But, man, what a cool situation he is in.
It'll be exciting either way to talk about the Bears, and we'll be doing it a lot. Coming up next here on Back Together Weekend, our NFL Live special edition show, we have a great interview to get to. Christian Kirk joining us. Everything you need to know about the Jaguars and what he's seen out there at all 32 NFL teams in camp. You see the Jaguars practicing earlier today. Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback there, getting ready to go. And Brian Thomas Jr., their draft pick, the speedster out of LSU. What does he bring to that offense that already has so many great weapons, including Christian Kirk, who joins us now on the show. We're so glad to have you, Christian. And we saw you guys practicing out there earlier. I guess we'll just ask, how was the practice? Was it hot? How you guys feeling about the season coming up?
Yeah, I think hot is a little bit of an understatement out here.
I know.
I've quickly begun to learn that Jacksonville is probably the most humid place in Florida. But it was great. It was great. Day 4 camp, just taking one step at a time. As an offense, we're just, getting into the basics of installing, our system and really just going out there and competing. Defense has done a great job of just challenging us early. So it's just stacking days and being consistent in our approach and, really just putting it all together.
Christian, Dan Orlovsky here. Good to see you, man. Recently, Josh Allen, in an interview, named you in his active NFL player foursome. Who's the better golfer, you or Josh?
I definitely got to give it to Josh. Granted, he does play a lot more than me.
A lot.
He's a golf nut, but we got a good little foursome that likes to play a lot. So it's our off-season thing that we like to do. It's just fun to get with those guys and get out there and compete it. But my game's coming along. I had some good wins and some matches we had this offseason, so I was glad to leave my golf game off in a good spot.
He called you the ringer. About Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis. What have you seen from those two that are they going to bring to your offense?
Yeah, Gabe, being in the league for a while, he's just a great physical presence, not only with what he can do intermediately, but down the field, bigger guy, and he just brings that veteran presence. He's a competitor. He's got a great motor, and he just pushes us every single day. So just to have a guy like that in our room, especially for the younger guys like, Brian, that are new, and even Parker Washington, just to be able to learn from a guy like helps. And then, Brian, he looks every bit of a first rounder. Just his athletic ability. He's fast, and for how tall he is, the way he's able to sink at the top of his routes, he's twitchy and very elusive. So he's a rookie receiver though. He's learning. He's just figuring out the nuances, but I have a great feeling that he's going to develop into a really good player.
Christian, on the opposite side of the football, you have a new defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen. I'm curious to know what your impressions are of the new-look Jaguars defense so far.
Yeah, Coach Nielsen is all ball, and you can kind of already see that defense has taken that mentality. They've definitely been giving us some issues the first 4 days of camp so far, and kind of mentioned earlier, it's been really good to go out there and compete against them because they bring energy, they bring juice, they're always around the ball, and you can tell those guys have a lot of fun playing for him, and he's really instilled a great mentality. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch them go to work and, have a good feeling that we're gonna get a lot of turnovers on that side of the ball.
Christian, hey, Louis Riddick here, man. It's good to see you. Look, 3 of us here at this set have been over to London a couple times to see you guys play. And we've gotten to talk to Doug Peterson numerous different times about the development of this football team and this football operation. And I've referred to this team as the all get off the bus team. You guys look the part when we see you come out on the practice field of a championship team. But what is it going to take for people to stop talking about Jacksonville as a potential team to actually realizing that potential and making some real waves in the AFC? What's the message? Is Doug telling you something different this year? Are you telling guys something different? How do you get moving over that hump?
Yeah, I think one of the things you kind of hit on the head was actually believing that we're a championship team. I feel like we're close, and we definitely talk about it a lot, but it takes not just a group of guys. It takes everybody to believe that we can be a championship team. And I think, last year, once we hit a little bit of adversity, some of that belief and that confidence, took a hurt a little bit. And so for us, it's just every single day believing that we're a championship team and working towards that. We talk a lot about having a vision. What does our vision want to be for this football team and this organization? And, everybody talks about a championship, but what are you going to do along the way to get there? And how are you going to hold guys accountable? So I think the big thing, for us this year, especially as leaders and from my standpoint, is holding guys to a championship standard and doing it day in and day out, because it's easy when, you're winning, a couple games in a row, you're sitting top of the AFC, you're 8-3, everything's nice. But when you get punched in the mouth, it gets real fast. So it's just, holding each other accountable, and that's the mentality.
That's cool.
That's well said. Christian, Trevor Lawrence has dealt with his fair share of adversity there in Jacksonville already, but how do you think even some of the failure last season has shaped him going into this year?
I think it just leaves, some stuff out there that I know that he wants. Anytime, especially with an off season like he's had, being able to get, his large contract and be the franchise. People always talk about, are they going to lose their chip on their shoulder, the drive? They have to search for something for motivation. But I've never really gotten that, from Trevor, of having to search for something to motivate him. He really always kind of has a chip on his shoulder and wants to prove to people, and not only, people on the outside, but especially on the inside, that he is the player and quarterback that, we all know that he is, that he can play to. So he just takes every day of just getting better. And I love his mentality, especially when talking to him. He's worked his butt off this offseason to just take that next step this year.
Thanks so much, Christian Kirk, for joining us here on NFL Live Back Together Weekend. And thanks for getting some golf in the show from Dan.
Yeah,
okay, you made his whole day.
Thank you. Go get a round in. Go get a round in.
Anytime, Dan. You can just call me. We can talk about
Done.
it.
Oh, no, don't do this. He's going to be blowing you up. Thanks to Christian Kirk. ABC from 2 to 4. You see all the teams taking the field here, and we're going to bring you all the video. It's coming, I promise. We're just waiting on some of it, okay?
Anytime you guys want to practice.
Hey, we saw Jacksonville, okay? We're hoping that the Eagles take the field soon. As you see, Louis Riddick, Adam Schefter, Dan Orlovsky here with you throughout the day. Now, when we get to all of these storylines, I think one of the big keys here is how many people have gotten paid. We'll get to that with Adam in just a moment. But first, Dan, a storyline that you're watching heading into this season.
Yeah, the San Francisco 49ers. We're talking about an organization and football team that 2 years ago goes to the NFC Championship game. Last year, loses a heartbreaker in the Super Bowl. And there's a little bit of conversation around some holdouts. Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, how much are they going to have to play Brock Purdy? Team, in the midst of a little bit of chaos, find a way to finally get over the hump, win one for their head coach, and all the talented players that they have coming off of those two back-to-back, essentially heartbreaking years. I'm fascinated by San Francisco.
Yeah, it's Green Bay. We started off the show talking about Jordan Love, but it's a bigger thing for me with Green Bay than just Jordan Love. Brian Gutekunst, look, I know that's a name that you're going to hear kind of thrown around here a lot in the preseason for the work that he has done. I'm just telling you, it's fascinating how he has rebuilt this football team. The offensive line is solid. The run game is going to be solid with Josh Jacobs. Jordan has nothing but young, dynamic playmakers at tight end and on the perimeter. Yeah. On the defense, it's first rounder, second rounder, first rounder. I mean, there's just playmakers all over the place. And just remember this, my favorite position. At safety, they have a tandem of guys right now that are going to light people up in the NFL. This team is the team to watch in the NFC.
Laura, watch all the contract issues unfolding in training camps across the country. We have already seen Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa land landmark deals on Friday. We still wait to see whether Dak Prescott gets a deal in Dallas, which looks unlikely at this point in time. And then there is the question of wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb, not in Dallas, waiting for a big deal. Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, waiting for a big deal. Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, waiting for a big deal. Ayuk not practicing, Chase not practicing. A lot of money questions right now going on across the league. Some have been answered, but plenty more still out there.
You heard Jerry Jones say all in. We'll see exactly what that means. The Cowboys practicing a little bit later. Let's get to the Eagles in that division as well. Nick Sirianni back for a 4th season as Eagles head coach, but he'll have 2 new coordinators. Kellen Moore comes over from the Chargers to lead the offense. Vic Fangio will be defensive coordinator, his 21st season as an NFL defensive coordinator. The team picked up Saquon Barkley and pass rusher Bryce Huff. Out are DeAndre Swift, Hassan Reddick, and the retired Jason Kelce, of course, who joins our ESPN family. Dan, you heard Sal Powell earlier talking about some of the changes that Kellen Moore brings to that offense, a little bit more shifting, motioning. You see the Eagles now out on the field at practice. I'll be interested to see even what Saquon Barkley's out there doing. But when you think about the changes that will happen with Kellen Moore, how does that help Jalen Hurts?
Well, I think it starts with that group that we're staring at the screen right now. This offensive line, 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, was by far the best unit in the league, and they were dominant. And there was a drop-off last year. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that they became bad, but they did not control and dominate the line of scrimmage like they had the previous year. So that has a butterfly effect. And number one, they weren't nearly as good handling the blitz as an offense, because when your offensive line isn't performing at a high level, teams are going to blitz you. Number two, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, he started to look at the pocket more than he did that previous MVP type of campaign season that he had in 22, because the unit wasn't good enough. And I want to see, can Jeff Stoutland, who's their offensive line coach, get that group back to playing to the level and the dominant standard that they had set, even without Jason Kelce. And then with the addition of Kellen Moore, the most interesting thing in that combination for me is Jalen Hurts is not Jalen Hurts unless you're running him. Kellen Moore does not have a past of running the quarterback. Dak Prescott in Dallas, he didn't do it that much. Justin Herbert with the Chargers, he didn't do it that much. But it also helps when you can an offensive line. So can that group get back? And then can Kellen Moore figure out the really good balance level of Jalen Hurts as a running quarterback threat-wise and still developing as that passer?
Last season, Philadelphia ranked last in overall use of motion and motion at the snap. The Chargers, under Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator, ranked top 10 in both of those areas, Lou.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that the coordinator changes are going to really be where this season really hinges for this football team, and their ability to really get the most out of what is pretty much ultimately 1 through 53 going to be a pretty damn strong roster.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, that's obvious, right? But we saw last year, like, right, so when the changes were made offensively and defensively at the coordinator positions, you know, people were like, yeah, well, you know what, Brian Johnson's been here. He was a quarterback coach. We kind of understand it. It'll be okay. Jalen and him will kind of like pick right up. He'll just move in the coordinator position, and the wheels fell off. You can never, I think those relationships and those hires are so important. Look on the defensive side now with Vic Fangio. When Vic went to Miami last year, you thought this is a guy who's like one of the godfathers of defense.
Right.
He's one of the godfathers of the 3-4 in particular. It was just a bad fit down there. Again, we were there. We saw it. We could hear the tension. It just didn't work. And now he's coming up there. Like, he's expected to really turn around that side of the football in a way that, look, we know that all the attention always goes to the offense. This is the side of the ball I think that their season really hangs on.
Yeah, I hear you there. Adam, I mean, the other big story here, obviously, is that they started the season 10-1 and then finished it 1-6. And the pressure was mounting on Sirianni, but he said, okay, I hear you. I'm going to clean house from the coordinator standpoint, start fresh here. How would you describe the situation that he's in as you see Jalen Hurts on the field here?
I think he knows the pressure that's on there, but really, this team is so loaded that there's no reason it shouldn't win the NFC East. Now, we know what it's like in Philadelphia. Also, if you're not winning there, you're going to hear all the criticisms, all the speculation, and that's going to be the case here with Nick Sirianni. This was an organization, not Nick Sirianni, an organization that decided to make wholesale changes at the coordinator spots, right? To go with Vic Fangio on the defensive side of the football, to go with Kellen Moore. So if they fall short again this year and struggle in the second half or the season the way they did in the second half last year, when they start thinking about those changes, it's going to come back to the head coach. It just will if they're not performing. He knows that. He's smart enough. And this is a team that, as good as it is, it does have questions. As Sal said, no Jason Kelce. So can Cam Jurgens step in at center and get the job done? Can Tyler Steen step in at guard next to him and get the job done? They are loaded at the skill positions. They need Jalen Hurts to get back to where he was. They have new coordinators. It's a new look, a new feel, some new hopes, but there are going to be some old questions if it doesn't happen in Philly again.
Yeah. They got to start well before that first Cowboys game, which I think is week 10. And I think their first 9 or so games, there's not, outside of 2 games that you sit there and go, those are going to be huge challenges. I think they play Green Bay week 1.
In Brazil.
Okay, but Atlanta should win. New Orleans should win. Tampa, that good game, but you would expect them to win. Cleveland, good game at the Giants, and then maybe Cincinnati, right? So other than that, you look at a favorable start to their schedule. Yeah. Louis, I wanted to talk about the defense that you kind of hinted at. Because, Shefty, you said loaded roster. I would agree with that offensively. There's a lot of talent on defense, but that is young, unproven talent. And we're talking about Jordan Davis, got to grow up. Jalen Carter, got to grow up. Nakobe Dean, got to grow up. Mitchell, their first-round draft pick out of Toledo, he's got to go. Cooper DeJean, is he going to have to be a guy that plays immediately for them? So while that offense is really proven and loaded, this defense, while talented and hopeful,
is unproven.
He's still young and unproven.
See, that's why, like, those games, that first month of the season before that early bye, those are toss-ups for me, man. Because you know how the first month. You know how the first month of the season is. It's like an extended training camp, right? And you're having new coordinators. And look, we understand. Everybody respects Vic Fangio. We get all that. I would have assumed last year that when we went down to Miami, everything would just have been like a machine, like clockwork.
Yeah.
You went down, you were just kind of like, whoa, like something's kind of off on this side of the ball
That's
here.
fair.
Although now he's at the spot that he wanted to be in the first place. But I'll tell you this, that Packers game, that's no gimme.
No doubt.
And I'll tell you this, if Kirk Cousins is able to hit the ground running in an offense that he already knows, he's like a coach on the field. The Falcons are going to have a amped-up defense. Raheem's going to have them ready to go. Going down to New Orleans is no cakewalk ever.
You know what's interesting, Lou? Week 1, Shanahan tree offense. Week 2, Shanahan tree offense. Week 4, Liam Cohen, Shanahan tree offense. Week 6, Cleveland, Shanahan tree. So they're going to see, and that's a very difficult offense schematically.
Those first 4 games, this is
that's interesting.
It's an interesting time of year for them, especially considering the changes that we talked about. And on the defense, as you've already alluded to, a lot of new leadership on that side of the ball.
You talk about the unproven part of the defense? Well, there's the guy, Saquon Barkley, who can help that defense.
Sure.
Because if he's running the ball and getting first downs and controlling the clock, that defense that's unproven, that you're worried about, Dan, is not going to be on the field quite as much, right? Saquon's doing his job, taking a handoff from a $51 million a year quarterback.
And his job will never have been easier. I mean, Saquon has always been a guy that, all right, I got to go make 4 yards when there's only 1 yard. I'm getting hit in the backfield. He will get to the line of scrimmage or past the line of scrimmage without getting touched or having to do anything so much more this year than he's ever been able to.
Yeah.
1, the offensive line. 2, the threat of Jalen as a runner, and holding defenders. I think Saquon has a unbelievably productive season.
You see Jalen Hurts there. Dan, he was injured in the latter part of the season,